Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 182 of the Citrix Session. I'm your host, Bill Sutton with XenTegra. I have with me today Todd Smith from Citrix. Todd, you want to give a shout out to our audience there?
Sure thing, Bill. Thanks for having me on today.
Of course. Seems like you and I are the dynamic duo lately, with Jeremy being available some and not available some, and our fearless leader, Andy Whiteside, kind of the same. So, which is fine. I think we've done well together and going through these things over the past several weeks. So yeah, this is episode 182. Last time I forgot to put that in until later, so I jumped it in quickly this time. So, all right. So today we're going to cover a new article. Obviously, it is entitled XenServer: Powering Your Present, Readying Your Future, and now available for all workloads. This is written by Jose Augustin of Citrix, and this I know that XenServer's been around a while. I looked it up, Todd, before I got on the call. 2007 is when Citrix bought XenServer from XenSource, or
Yep.
I guess they bought XenSource really.
Yeah.
Um, that's really far longer ago than I thought it would be. That's 18 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a pretty amazing ride with the XenSource guys.
Yeah,
Of course, XenSource came out of the Xen.org
right,
project out of Cambridge University over in England.
right.
Um, Started off kind of as an open source research project to really kind of bring hypervisors kind of to the forefront, right? So what can be done, what can be leveraged, and XenSource was the actual commercial product associated with the Xen.org project. We still have a lot of ties to that project and that research that's continuing to go on. You think about that, I mean, the Xen project has been going on for 25 plus years.
Oh yeah. So XenServer is at least in terms of as long as Citrix is owned it, is an adult now.
Yes,
So, and
absolutely.
it's but it's been a big boy for a long time. I can remember I think when they bought it, it was either version 3 or version 4, maybe
Yep.
5. I think it was 4. And I can
Yeah.
remember installing it for the first time and kind of having that wow factor. So, I mean, back then it was definitely a wow factor. Today it would be kind of a nah, it's just another hypervisor. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of things here that I think, particularly Citrix customers, will be really pleased with, or at least the core of this announcement.
Yeah.
But we'll set it up a little bit. What's driving this is the changes in the industry, and some of the things that we see happening with other players in the virtualization industry, price changes and platform changes and things of that nature are really, driving the need for a truly robust alternative hypervisor to host workloads. And historically, the XenServer has really been focused on hosting Citrix only workloads, or directly related to Citrix workloads, versus general purpose compute and storage work, or
Yeah.
compute workloads. And that's kind of what this announcement really covers, right? Todd, you want to go into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we first acquired XenSource and came out with XenServer,
Right.
the real goal was to kind of optimize and enable customers to utilize a hypervisor that was obviously optimized to run Citrix workloads.
Mhm.
Citrix workloads in terms of both the Citrix virtual app and desktop products and all of the associated components for that. But XenServer is also the core operating system that goes into all of our SDX
Right.
NetScaler.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's been hardened down. And several years ago, we made the decision to really kind of focus on the Citrix or optimizing those Citrix workloads first and foremost. It was always kind of a best effort approach towards other workloads, right?
Right.
So your Microsoft Office backend, your Exchange servers, your SQL servers, your IIS servers, and things like that. With this announcement, it's actually now saying, hey, we will fully support those additional workloads. And part of this is, due to some of the changes in the marketplace regarding hypervisors,
Mhm.
um, and then also a change to our overall product licensing strategy to where XenServer is now included in your Citrix
Right.
platform as well as Citrix Universal Hybrid Multi-Cloud license.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So, historically, or I should say, when the UHMC or Universal Hybrid Multi-Cloud license and the platform license were announced, the support for XenServer under those licenses was really just focused on Citrix workloads, right, Todd? And
Yes.
you could go beyond that, but it was kind of at your own risk to some degree, or Citrix would provide best efforts support. And we've had several customers that have said, I want to use it for everything. And we've said, well, you can do that, but there's some risk. Well, this
Yeah.
eliminates the risk
Yeah.
effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other thing besides the supportability of the workloads, there are some feature gaps between what's available in, traditional vSphere
Right.
capabilities, right? So, some of the additional functionality around things like NSX
Right.
and some of the storage optimizations and things like that. Obviously, them coming out of a hardware focused company, with the hardware ownerships that were out there,
Hmm.
kind of drove that. But we also feel that we've added a lot of value in the XenServer space, um, to do things like accelerate and optimize and be able to really kind of leverage some of our technologies into a hypervisor, platform.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the sections in the article, the power of the stream, unlocking innovation faster. I don't. Can you talk about this a little bit, Todd? Because I'm not all that familiar with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think about it, a lot of the functionality of hypervisors is very IO dependent and very much tied to the storage system that's
Right.
out there. And one of the things we did with XenServer is we've added in the capability to really allow you to have a provisioning or streaming like experience when you're booting up and taking down different hypervisor guests, right? So instead of having to have specific hardware or specific disk volumes associated with those hypervisors and those guest VMs, you can actually leverage something like we have with provisioning services,
Huh.
right? To be able to leverage that. Not only that, but it also, injecting in the machine personality, right? So being able to say, hey, this machine is, or this virtual machine is going to be used as a delivery controller, or it's going to be used as an application server, or it's going to be used as a storefront, or it's going to be used as a variety of different use cases there that would get injected into that disk, that base level disk, virtual
Okay.
disk.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So one of the other things they mentioned in this article is XenServer 8.4. So I
Yep.
think that's the latest released version. Is that right?
Yep. That is the latest. I will tell you this: we had some challenges around naming what the product is, and
Yeah.
we had a period where we had XenServer, then we rebranded it as Citrix Hypervisor, and then when we announced it was going back to the name XenServer, there was some mismatches between version numbers.
Right.
8.4 is the latest, most up-to-date version of XenServer.
Yeah. So one of the things a couple of things the article references is superior performance.
Yep.
XenServer's always been high efficiency, and can deliver high efficiency workloads in an appropriate manner, with good response times. Streamlined management and automation. This is some of this is newer, I would say.
Yep.
Based on my history, like robust APIs. I don't know that those have been around terribly long. And then of course a lot more automation.
Yep.
And then the old XenCenter intuitive tool. I've always found that really simple compared to some of the alternatives. And that's always been an advantage. And then, why don't I stop there and let you comment?
Sure. So from a performance perspective, you know, Zen and the Zen server product has always been really focused on how do we get the most performance out of the minimal amount of hardware associated
Right.
with it, right? So instead of having to do something like load up the entire set of libraries, it's pulling the libraries as needed, right? So
Right.
very similar to the way the provisioning services piece of it works in a stream in general, right? You're only pulling down information that's necessary for that operating system to conduct the next activity.
Right.
Um,
It's a
Try
very
to put that
storage
in
efficient.
memory.
Very storage efficient in that. Yeah.
Absolutely, it's very storage efficient. It allows you to respond very quickly, and once it goes into memory of the host,
Yep.
it's now you're reading it at the speed of the silicon. You're not relying on the network. You're not relying on a disk adapter. You're not relying on fiber channel or SCSI or anything like that. It's actually reading it directly out of the memory of the host.
Right.
That's one of the huge benefits there.
Yeah.
What
One
it
of the.
also allows,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
Bill.
No, that's all right.
What it also allows us to do is, be able to quickly provision and deprovisioning
Right.
the guest VMs, right? So instead of having to have an N+1 type of scenario, you can actually spin up and tear down uh, guest VMs very quickly.
Hmm.
So there's some huge operational benefits there.
Right. Right. Yeah, the last bullet under this section regarding 8.4 is business continuity, and these are things I think folks may not realize that XenServer has had for a long time, which is
Yep.
built-in high availability,
Yep.
live migration, the ability to migrate workloads from one host to the other host, and then DR capabilities.
Yep.
And there's some other things I was flipping around here on the website. There's also a conversion manager
Yep.
application that actually I've used that both personally and in customer situations to migrate workloads from VMware ESXi natively to run on XenServer, and it actually works within XenCenter, and you just connect it to your host or to your vCenter server, and just pull the machines in, and it moves them over. It will reinstall the Xen tools. Works really well. I was actually frankly surprised that a lot of times these migration tools come with a lot of promise and then they kind of fall short when you start really getting in the weeds on them. But I found this one actually worked very well, both in the customer scenario. I think it was about 30 plus VMs that we needed to migrate. And they did it literally in a couple of days. It was really
Yeah.
straightforward.
Yeah, and that was critical. That was a realization that we had many years ago when we used to have to rely on third-party tools like
Right.
PlateSpin and some of the other,
Right.
manufactured
Oh,
tools.
yeah.
It was good, but customers were saying, "Hey, you know what? We need something that Citrix is going to fully support." So we decided to start building in some of these conversion tools. We built in the ability to migrate from VMware, vSphere, as well as ESXi, and also being able to uh, leverage things like our image portability service, which allows you to
Right.
go across different cloud providers, right?
Hmm.
So if you've got an image that's being used in Azure, or if you've got an image that's being used in AWS, and you want to bring it into leverage the Citrix cloud, um, taking some of that capabilities and bringing that into the XenServer toolkit as well. Um, there's going to be a lot of additional development here. Obviously, being able to say, hey, we support all workloads.
Right.
So we're going to have to make continued investments, right? And these continued investments are really some of the things that are coming down the pipe.
Yeah. 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 We just did, or actually, I think we're finishing a project for a customer, a bank that that went full in on XenServer to host their Citrix workloads. And I've already reached out to our rep and made sure that he's advised them that it now is supported for traditional workloads. So they may even be able to expand it further. Um, they're using it, like I said, primarily for hosting the VDAs, the workloads for a Citrix environment. So the next section of the article, the horizon expands, is what it's titled. Talks about the next generation is in development, already in the works, and that's going to be XenServer 9.
Yep.
Doesn't really give us a lot of detail here, but I would just say stay tuned. Even more features and functionality, really kind of solidifying the XenServer platform as a really solid player in the virtualization space
going forward. Yeah, and I think, Bill, if you look at that kind of the last line item on that, or the last sentence in that, it talks about XenServer 9 will embody our vision for the hypervisor, and it focus on more power, more flexible, and adapted to meet the needs, the evolving needs of the enterprise, right?
Right.
So if you look into that, it's going to have better optimizations, better power. It's going to have a lot more flexibility about the workloads that can be run on it. And more importantly, that evolving needs of the enterprise really talks about things like, how do I scale it up and scale it down quickly? How do I make sure I manage it more efficiently and more effectively, right? And some of that may be some very simple things. Other ones are a little bit more consuming, right? So everyone's looking at things like bringing AI into automation, right?
Yep.
Being able to say, hey, you know what? I'm starting to see more users come in here. I'm going to start triggering some additional resources be spun up and made available. Or on the flip side, I'm seeing it's kind of a decline in my usage. I can start spinning some of these machines down, moving workloads from one group of servers to another is another critical piece about that optimization. Kind of systems management, the new systems management model, which is less human interaction, more automation, and more responsiveness to events and activities, is really kind of where a lot of these goals are going.
Yeah, we're even hearing things in the field of customers wanting to leverage the hypervisor, really no matter which one it is, I think, to allow spinning up and spinning down of like VDI type workloads, spinning them up during the workday, spinning them down using things like XenServer and auto scale, spin the workloads down in the evening and overnight using them for research, leveraging AI or some other tool. Spinning up other VMs in that space. So that we're seeing a lot of interest in that. I mean, we've been talking about that for years, about leveraging the workloads that are idle on the weekends or at night for other purposes and being able to get the full value out of your hardware investment. But I think with the continued development and expansion of AI, we're going to see a lot of that, that becoming a reality, and it helps justify the need for things like GPUs. You may not really be able to, you may, depending on your workloads, leverage GPUs for VDI. But when you start saying, well, I can do that, but then I could leverage them to do some sort of AI or media processing or something off hours, then it makes that investment much more attractive.
Yeah, and it's kind of amazing how everything old is new again, Bill.
I know.
Because
it is. Yeah.
When we first acquired XenSource and XenServer came around, I was part of the emerging products team, the emerging technologies team, and that was the provisioning services. The Ardence team kind of got smashed together with some of the early XenServer teams that were out there, and we would go in and talk to insurance companies and banks. And ironically, one of the people that was always in the room was like the old mainframe person. And this guy would sit back and say, don't talk to me about virtual machines. I was running virtual machines back in the 70s and early 80s.
Yeah.
Because that's the way they justified mainframes, is they would say, this is a machine that's designed to run 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And during the day, it would do bulk transaction processing in real time. And then at night, they'd flip the machine over to do bulk transactions, like all of the updates for a custodian bank, or do a lot of data analysis. On a mainframe, that was a lot of things there. The fact that you just mentioned, hey, having one set of resources be adjusted so that they can run off hours doing different tasks, and during the day their VDI machines or their web servers or there's something else that requires you more real-time responsiveness and real-time usage, right? So there's a lot of things that are changing, and there's a lot of things that are going to stay the same.
Yeah.
The only thing that's different is sometimes the label on the machine is slightly different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's really the crux of the article. At the bottom, it does have a section that says take the next step. There is a link for to learn more about hypervisors. So if you don't know that much about hypervisors, this is actually a kind of a neat little article on the Citrix site that talks about what they are and how do they work and kind of, you know, 101 type of thing. But you know, a lot of times when we start talking about these newer technologies, sometimes it's helpful for some folks to go back and refresh themselves on what this really means. And those that don't, obviously, I think that's neat that they included that in the article.
Yeah.
There's a quick start guide that'll take you to the Citrix Docs article, and then of course an article on understanding the XenServer release lifecycle. So a lot of things to come in this area, and I'm looking forward to seeing how we see this expand over time. So
Yeah, Bill, I think if I were to have the opportunity to edit this document before it got
uh-huh.
posted, I would also talk about some of the updated hardware compatibility lists that are out there.
hmm
It's definitely worth looking into. Um, it's changing frequently.
Yeah.
As we've started making more and more announcements around what are the capabilities that are going to be included in 8.4, what are some of the workloads that are going to be running on there, and then also keeping up with a lot of the different hardware types that are out there. So you can look at it from, hey, I want to look at it from a rack system
Right.
all the way down to what happens when I put in a NVIDIA uh, GPU into there.
Right.
Which
Right.
ones are compatible? Which versions are compatible? We just had a recent conversation with a customer. They're looking at swapping out a lot of their hardware in their data center, and they're looking at a different chip manufacturer, not only different hardware vendor, but a different chip manufacturer. We pointed them at the hardware compatibility list, and they came back and said, hey, this is great, but the version of the servers that we're going to be purchasing are not on the list. Within a couple of days, the hardware manufacturer actually did their certification testing
Huh.
and they were added on to the
Yeah.
XenServer hardware compatibility list.
Yeah, and that
Um,
that can be reached at HCL, so hardware compatibility list .zenserver.com.
yep, absolutely.
I just went out to it, Todd, while you were talking, and it makes reference to XenServer 8.4. So
Yep.
obviously being kept up to date and capturing the hardware and components that are needed to continue to support
Yep.
XenServer. All right, that's all we have for today. Any final thoughts, Todd?
No, I think this is one of those game-changing announcements. For years we've had customers that have said, "Yeah, it's great. I want to really use XenServer, but our standard is something
Right,
else,
right,
and that something else can run all the workloads, not just these Citrix workloads.
right.
We're going to kind of stick with them." Um, the changes in some of the market has really kind of driven a lot of organizations to look at, do I want to have a single vendor lock-in approach? Do I want to be able to run some of my workloads on XenServer and some of my workloads on some other hypervisor, whether it be Hyper-V or vSphere or whatever?
Right.
Um, to now all of a sudden, hey, you know what? If I'm making the investment in Citrix, both on the platform as well as the Universal Hybrid Multi-Cloud license,
Mhm.
I can now have this as an entitlement without having to go and spend an additional
Right.
part of my budget on that. And still now with this be fully supported for other workloads besides those traditional Citrix workloads.
That's right. It's an obvious, I think it's an obvious thing to include and to make part of the platform of the UHMC. And to those customers, like you said, that are struggling with cost or complexity, and they've got those entitlements. I mean, you're paying for it. You might as well leverage it in your environment. And the beauty of this is, like you said, is it's not limited to Citrix anymore. It can go well beyond that to encapsulate all the workloads.
Yeah.
So all good stuff. Well, Todd, we'll call it a day then. A pretty short one today, but that's all good. Thanks a
Yeah.
lot for your time today. Appreciate you joining us as usual, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, sir.